I'm so thankful to have pulled up a chair at the family table with my new friend Lantz Howard. He provides some incredible resources and insights into parenting. He's got four girls and a lovely wife, and he shares about their marriage, about them as parents, some things that they do and try not to do. Great advice. I'm so excited for you to hear from my new friend Lance. Welcome to the family table. I'm Matthew Eford. Join me as I speak with parents, caregivers, and family experts about the joys and challenges of family life. We'll share the stories, advice, and insights that will help you build a loving and resilient family. Pull up a chair and join us at the family table. Welcome, everyone, to the family table. I have Lantz Howard here with me. I'm so excited to talk with Lance. Thank you so much, Lance, for coming on with us. Those who may not know you, tell us about you, your family, what's kind of the makeup, and what's the role that you play in your family.
Yes, Matthew. Thanks for allowing me to be here this morning to serve you and your audience listening. I'm Lantz Howard. I live north of Dallas in Denison, Texas. I'm an executive coach and marriage therapist. I practice an integrated approach in serving people to live a wholehearted life in leadership. For myself, I've got four girls. I've been married 18, excuse me, next week is the 18th, and I've been married 20 years.
Wow,
So,
congratulations.
20
Yeah,
years and four girls later, we're having a great time.
fantastic. And what are the ages of your girls?
So we got 14, 12, 10, and 9.
Okay.
So, as I like to say, some days I'm not sure if I'm a rock star or just a dad because I just go around picking up panties all day long. So,
Oh man, I love that so much. So tell me, you referenced there in your introduction an integrated life. What does that look like for you when you're helping coach somebody? What does that look like?
sure. So, oftentimes I think as men in particular, we get hyper focused on an area of growth. Let's
Okay.
take both you and I are CrossFitters, right? Uh, so we can be like, man, I want to improve my front squat. And we just go all in on like, well, what I need to do and how to get better lunges and get stronger and all this. But what happens when we become hyper focused in one area is that other areas oftentimes begin to drop off. And so as business leaders, sometimes we get so hyper focused on business growth or a partnership that our marriage begins to go by the wayside. And the next thing we know, we look up and it's been 3 or 4 months since our last date night.
Okay.
So I don't really think there's a balanced approach to life. I think it's more like, okay, how do I show up and live a wholehearted life in everything I do? And
I
if we
love
do
that.
that, I think it's going to be rewarding and God honoring at the same time.
I love that. Yeah, we say around here often that balance is a myth, right? That we choose to navigate the pull between work and family life. So, what advice would you have to speak specifically to our dads, right? If they're a business owner, if they're a business leader, a entrepreneur, what advice would you have for them in navigating that pull between home life and business life?
If you're not measuring it, it doesn't matter. All right. So I remember it was 7 or 8 years ago now at this point, Matt. We looked up in the midst of having just a slew of girls, and I I had burnt out. Uh, but I looked up and I realized like I hadn't really been on any intentional dates. And it was about the same season that we're recording this in December. And what I did is I put all of our date nights for the whole next year on the calendar. I was like,
I
you know what?
love
If
that.
we can just get one date night a month on the calendar, it's a win. And so I just said, okay, here's a random Friday, here's a random Thursday. And it was just a reminder, a placeholder of like, if I do this well this next year, I think everything else will begin to have a snowball effect as well. So for me, if it doesn't get on the calendar, it doesn't really matter. I had one of my girls hounding me the other day to do a bake sale at the end of the street, and she's like, "Open up your calendar and put it on there." And
I
she,
love
I
that.
mean,
I love
she's
that.
10. She knows. So, but yeah, if it's not on her calendar, it's really not that important.
I love that. And so for that year, what was the difference that you saw? Give us kind of the 10,000 foot view in your marriage, in your parenting, and in your business.
Man, that year is honestly a blur because it was in the midst of just struggle, just occupational struggle. But for my wife and I in particular, it led to us recentering ourselves specifically on fasting together, praying together.
Okay.
Instead of her trying to do this home thing and me trying to do this work thing, like we came together and said, "Hey, this is a complicated season. How do we unite and rally together around prayer and fasting and listening to God?" And unfortunately, in that season, I became extremely passive aggressive, and it was just unhealthy. But I didn't see it at the time. At the time, I saw it as extreme move of faith and a bold move.
Okay.
Uh, but I think God works those things out. He's maturing us and growing us up all along the way. But our relationship became a lot more intentional.
Yeah. Wow. So talk to me about the passive aggressive. You don't mind me asking. When you said that you said you thought that was a bold move of faith, how did that kind of come out in realizing no, you're being more passive aggressive? What was that process like?
Sure. Well, to be honest, and everybody listening is going to laugh. It's hysterical when I even say it out loud. I wrote a 15-page letter of resignation to my board. Um,
Well,
and in the moment, I was like, well, they're not hearing me. I'm just going to let them like know everything that I want to let them know as I leave. Uh, right or wrong, I don't think it was the best move. I
okay.
don't think that it was like one of those things like, well, you shouldn't have done it. I think it was a growing opportunity for me to realize there's been other moments in my life that I have this false belief that your voice doesn't matter.
Okay.
And so for me, I have to actually practice being more assertive, practice being more aggressive in relationships. Because I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, I use it in my coaching practice
Oh yeah.
frequently. But I'm an Enneagram 9, which I
Okay.
great bringing everybody together. I can make the team really work together really well. But what ends up happening is I am the one that loses the voice at the table
Yeah.
because I'm more curious about everybody else and making sure that they're winning as well. So, uh, yeah, 15 pages. I wouldn't recommend resigning that way.
I love that. So I'm an 8 wing 9, so I have a little bit of understanding from you there, and I appreciate you sharing that very much. So talk to us as a dad. You've got 4 girls at home, which is amazing. I have 4 boys, so very different perspective on life. What is the most rewarding aspect of being a dad? What have you found over your time as a dad?
Oh man, what's not rewarding? As I get older, I think just the most rewarding thing is just like cuddling with them. Like
Okay,
they still want me to hold them. Matt, you'll laugh at this. We actually have a rocking chair. All the girls, our house is big enough for them to all have their own room, but we've intentionally designed our life in a way that they can be really, really good friends, right?
cool.
So they all share a room together. There's a rocking chair in that room. And actually, yesterday, one of my daughters spray painted it to match the room a little bit better. She asked, she's like, "Why did y'all stop rocking us?" And I'm like, "I don't know if we really stopped, because we still do it around rite of passages on their birthday and stuff." Uh, but she's like, I was like, "Would you like me to rock you?" And she's like, "Yeah, let's do it." Like, right? I mean, and she's 12. I think we lose a sense of wonder in all aspects of our life of like, it's okay to be a child. It's okay to have a play and a creativity and a sense of awe about life. Like too often we get so caught up in being tight and hard nosed and driven that we forget to really play. And so even with that said, and going back to your question, I really try to be intentional about just playing with them, chasing them around the house, tickles and cuddles, and whatever that looks like. It's a reminder for me to be lighthearted when I'm engaging them by
I love
playing.
I love that. So what advice you mentioned that you've tried to intentionally organize your life to where your kids will be friends. What does that look like? What does that look like for the Howard family? And what advice would you give to parents that hear that and they say, yes, I want that for my kids? What advice would you have?
We homeschool, and I say we very loosely because my wife does 99% of it.
We do too,
Uh,
and it's the same way. I got you.
so I think by design, they're spending a lot of time together. And so I don't know if there's anything we're intentionally doing to say, hey, y'all are going to be friends, other than proximity and time,
Okay.
right? We play board games together. Actually, last night, one of my daughters, she's like, hey, let's learn this game that you got earlier this year. It's cribbage.
We
And
haven't
so
played
we
that
got
yet.
out. Well, we haven't either. We watched some YouTube videos and we attempted to learn, but it didn't work. And it's John Eldridge. I had him on my podcast earlier this year. He said he and his wife Stacy were playing cribbage, and I'm like, oh, cribbage! I've never played cribbage, so I bought
Yeah.
cribbage, and it's been sitting there. And so we got it out for 15 minutes, and we attempted to take the first step of learning. But that's not unusual, right? It's not a ritual. It's not like a, Sunday night thing or Tuesday night thing, but it's not uncommon for us one time a week to be around playing a board game together as a family.
I love that. I love Eldridge. I'm a big fan of the books and the resources that he has, and
Oh,
we
absolutely.
will definitely check out that. Um, our oldest is almost 7, so I think we're a
Okay.
little south of the age range for that, but it definitely be something we look at. What games y'all typically play? Do you have a go to as a family of a game that you really like?
Our go-to is Clue.
Nice.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
a just fun, simple, it takes an hour or so. I think we played about 3 weeks ago. Um, and I messed the game up. Somebody, how you it's like, oh, you got all three clues. Apparently I had one of the cards in my hand still Matthew, and I was like, oh, sorry. Because I totally ruined the game for everybody else, and the game wasn't even over. But I was just, as fathers and business owners, you get it. Sometimes you're there with your family, but you're not, 100% there. And
Yeah.
like mentally, I'm like, oh yeah, like right. And so, even in my best attempts to be intentional and present, the reality is like I'm still human,
Still
just
getting
like everybody
distracted.
else.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So, as a dad, what are some ways that you're trying to teach your daughters responsibility? What are some practical
Mm.
ways what advice would you give to parents as they look out and look to the future of their kids? What advice would you have?
So a few things we do. Several years ago, they started a pie business together. It's called Sister Sweetie Pies. They're in the thick of that
I
right
love that.
now. And so they've got about 4 different pies that they will make together. Somebody just ordered one this weekend, and so that has a little momentum around it. That helps teaches them some responsibility and discipline.
And how?
They all have their own. Go ahead.
Let's touch on that one because I love that. Our boys have done little businesses in our neighborhood. So, talk us through as a dad. How did you support them and not take that over? Because that's always been my struggle. Is like, hey, yeah, let's do this. Let's blow it big. So, what advice would you have on that?
Oh, let's see. When did we start this? This was probably 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago at this point. Um, my oldest daughter and I made the first pie together. It was an apple pie, horrible, absolutely horrible. Uh, but I bought it from her, just as a sign of like, hey, I support and I want to cheer you on. Uh, my dad bought the second pie. It was an apple pie at that time. We don't make apple pies anymore. Um, and so supporting it looks like even just the other day we had to order more sticker labels for Sister Sweetie Pies that goes on top of the box, right?
Okay.
Uh, supporting it help means when I order those stickers and it costs $36, they have to give me $36 back,
Yeah. Cool.
right? Uh, sport is really scaffolding, you know, uh, meaning that there was a long season that my wife would be in the kitchen, or I would be in the kitchen observing, monitoring, watching everything was being okay. But now it really is like that scaffolding is being removed from them, that they can really do it all alone,
I
right?
love that.
And so I think it's
So
just
you're not
small.
helping them with sales. You're not helping them with a website. You're not. Are you making them think through any of that? Or are you saying, hey, if you want to think through this, I'm here?
We have the domain for the pies, sistersweetiepies .com. Haven't done anything with it. We help them with like a Facebook group page, Facebook, throwing it out there, letting our
Sure.
friends know like
Yeah.
this weekend they're making pies. But I think when the season's right for them to kind of start learning some of those things, because that's more the technology side of things that they honestly have no clue around. And they don't have social media access or cell phone access or any of those things. So some of that, there's a lot more scaffolding on the marketing piece of it right now. Uh, but but the pie that we sold this past weekend was just a word of mouth. It was referral. So I mean that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you said they've been doing it 4 years now. And do all four of them work together, or is this the older two? Who of your girls who's most interested in it?
Primarily the oldest three. One of the girls did cookies and brownies the other day at the end of the street. The girl that made the pie this past weekend was girl number two. So it's really our oldest girl's in basketball right now, so her time capacity is a little bit different.
Sure. No, I love that.
And and really like just on the whole parenting conversation, this season I've had to learn and pay attention to like their gifts and desires and leanings, and it's okay that all right, maybe you're done with basketball. I get it. It's not going to be a forever thing. And so letting go of that has been a gift and a struggle. But realizing like, oh, you're into gymnastics or you're into puppies, and like as the seasons go, you help just speak life over those specific gifts, whether they're a natural gift or a supernatural gift that God has given them.
Cool. I like that. So, what advice would you give to a parent that says that's in the struggle of my kids become maybe a little apathetic or just not a little disinterested, but they have a lot of natural ability in a sport or in a the fine arts, whatever it may be, and they kind of hit their first wall of I can quit this now, or I can get over this hurdle and get into the quote unquote next level of enjoyment of this sport or this activity. What advice would you give to a parent in that arena?
Welcome to suffering. Uh, I mean, right? We remember when our kids were learning to ride their bicycles. You may be in the middle of it with some of your younger ones right now. Uh, you learn when to take the training wheels off versus when to put them all back on,
Yeah.
right? Uh, and so I think as parents, especially as it relates to some of the club sports that we have now and trying to go to whatever the perceived next level is, we have to remember that at the end of the day, it's all of that is one big business. Like there's no next level when it becomes to sports.
I love that.
I mean, it really is. I think we have to be mindful of like, is this my ego? Is this the kid's ego? How much time have we really spent? How much money have we really spent? And where is this headed? And I say all this to say, um, I've seen way too many families spend thousands upon thousands, thousands of dollars for a scholarship, whatever that scholarship may be. And the kid loses interest at 18, 19, and 20, and they're done when they get to college. And so I think that's why we have to go back to saying like, hey, what is God up to in their life? And how do we help them discern the will of God in their life? Because at 19, it may be different than what it was at 15. And let's not continue to drive down this
Yeah.
road when a season may be over.
Yeah. I love that. And I wholeheartedly agree. I saw way too many of my friends that were incredible athletes get pushed into their dad was living vicariously through them, and it drove them to hate the game. And it's,
Yeah.
we've had friends that same thing. I had a good dear friend of mine that played piano, and his parents pushed him over the I enjoy this to now I hate it, and he doesn't play.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just,
And that
it's a balance.
yeah, I mean, Matt, the reality is like our stewardship as parents is trying to help them become mature, God-loving, Jesus-following adults.
Yeah.
And if we do that, like we've won. Anything else is just icing on the cake. But I think so many times is that we put the icing in front of kingdom priorities for sure.
I love that. Yeah, that's an excellent perspective. I appreciate that a lot. So, talking about our kids and maturing, Lance, how have you approached really difficult conversations with your girls? What does that look like?
Trying to remember the last difficult conversation. Um, I mean, you just had to bring it up. There was one last week, 2 weeks ago, with my oldest, uh, that I was like, "Hey, this is just a reminder. You're not in trouble." And trying to put that buffer there, like, "Hey, this is just one of those moments in life that we have to learn from." Um, and thankfully, like, there hasn't been like just hard conversations at this point. And who knows, it may be a nine of something like I'm not paying attention to and ignoring.
Sure,
Uh, but there hasn't been overly complicated things other than just like, hey, uh, female relationships are complicated, friend relationships are complicated. And let's just remember that we want to treat people the way that you want to be treated whenever it comes to your friend circles. But other than that, I don't know if there's been anything super complicated. Our girls are super honoring about the cell phone policies that we have and some of the social media things. And I expect, as they get older, we'll probably have more complicated conversations.
sure. Yeah. So, if you don't mind me asking, what policies, what procedures have you put in place to say like these are the guidelines that the Howard family will follow as of this year? What are those in terms of the phone and social media?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it as of this year. So our oldest babysits, and so when she babysits, she takes my phone and uses that. Right now, my bent towards social media is like, hey, let's help you navigate that possibly 12 months before you leave the house, like quote unquote
Okay.
18, right?
Okay.
18, 19. Um, as far as cell phones go, as they start driving, we'll probably have more of like a family style cell phone. Um, that okay, whoever's going to work today at Chick-fil-A, that's who gets the cell phone. Like, right,
Yeah.
if you're at the house, you don't need the cell phone. I mean, it is weird that they they often use my phone to text friends or whatever, or iMessage but uh, I think as those things become a little bit more routine and common, uh, we'll have to figure out, case by case, season by season, year by year.
Sure. I love that, and I love the guardrails that you're putting up for your girls. And there's so much data out there about social media and about
Yeah.
phone usage, and it's too early and it's too damaging, and the impact that it has on them. So I appreciate the way that you're modeling that. My boys are not there yet. We're not having those conversations, even though a neighbor of ours has an old phone and he's a preteen, and it's kind of weird that our son's like, "Hey, why don't I get a phone?" Like, well, buddy, you're 7. Like, what would you do on a phone? So
Yeah.
that's definitely conversations we're starting to have those, but not near the level that your family is. Um,
Yeah.
so Lance,
Well,
let me.
I'll just add one quick thing. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, please. No, go
Uh,
ahead.
on that, even just recently, like screen time for us is just like anything on the computer and or TV. And so TV meaning YouTube and whatever. Uh, just a few weeks ago, I was getting so frustrated and annoyed that, hey, can I have screen time? Hey, can I have screen time? Hey, and I'm like, sure, 10 minutes, 7 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. And it was just kind of turning into this hogwash of like, I don't really know what's happening, right? So 3 weeks ago, a month ago, I said, hey, starting this week, you get 60 minutes of screen time. You can use it however you normally would use it, but that's what you get is 60 minutes. And it's gone over super well because now it's not only they receive it, but it's also their discipline as well. So it's like, all
Yeah,
right,
they're starting to budget
uh,
their time.
yeah, yeah. And so it's super cool to see like them navigating the budgeting their time and guilty as charged. I'm like, I need to put myself on a screen limit.
Yeah,
Like
me too.
uh, I'm like, somebody needs to parent me. Is really what I'm learning.
I love
So
that. One of the best decisions that Hannah and I have made is we have a place in our house that when the quote unquote work day is done, as a business owner, it's never really done, but I have a period in my schedule that I block off in the afternoons that I do the best that I can to keep that blocked off. And my phone and Hannah's phone goes in a place in the house and it's up until the boys go
yeah,
to sleep.
it's so good.
And that has been
So good.
it has been so life giving for our family, right? It's just moments that we
Yeah.
get to play outside, we get to play board games, we get to we our boys love Do Perfect. It's good, clean content, and it may be something that we say, hey, let's watch a Do Perfect together as a family, and then we try to recreate it, and it's so fun. So
100%.
it's
Yeah.
we like that a lot. So let me take a step back, Lance. The difficult conversations, it's not just with our kids, right? It's with our spouse. So how have you found success in navigating those kind of conversations with your wife, and what advice would you give to a husband or wife out there that says, hey, I feel okay having these conversations with my kids, but I really struggle with my wife or really struggle with my husband?
Yeah. Man, Matt, this is probably my greatest area of insecurities because as men, a blanket statement, but it's probably true. Oftentimes, our desires, wants, and needs in the context of marriage is around sexual intimacy, right?
Sure.
And so I've been a bumbling fool uh, and tripped over myself numerous times when it comes to these conversations. Uh, I'll go back to that in a moment. What I've learned, and I think what men need to hear before I continue to go forward, is that sexual intimacy is an amazing gift. But our deepest desire and want and need is actually connection
Yeah.
or touch. Because let's face it, like once the orgasmic climax has been reached in sexual intimacy, it's like, oh, that was great and amazing and beautiful. But we really come back to this idea like, well, that's not life. That's not happening every single moment. And so some of our deepest desire is actually an emotional connection that we don't know how to put words to.
Sure.
And so my deepest emotional connection and needs around sexual intimacy is feeling unwanted. I use like a four-step framework around helping men navigate like, okay, what is it that is actually going on? You may be anger or pissed off, and that's okay, but that's not actually what you feel. That's a coping mechanism. So I feel unwanted, I feel unloved, I feel unseen, or I feel disconnected.
Okay.
I want to be connected to you. I want to be wanted by you. And what I'm going to do is have this hard conversation about I would prefer this in our sexual intimacy. Would you be open to X? Right. And so I think it really starts that way of building out an emotional framework of saying, okay, I feel disconnected. I want to feel connected to you. I'm going to choose to have this super awkward, vulnerable conversation that I'm not real comfortable having. And because of that, could we explore this a little bit further?
I love that.
And when I come back to that simple center and that simple framework, uh, I can remain emotionally calm. But uh, I've sabotaged on numerous occasions sexual intimacy because of my short vocabulary or
Sure.
because of like this reaction of like, wow, I'm 2 years old again. I'm going to take my toys
Yeah,
and
yeah. I'm
you
gonna, I'm gonna
know,
take my toys and play somewhere else. Yeah,
right,
I'm
right.
gonna pitch a temper tantrum. Yeah, and that's so easy, right? As a man, and as you're, I love that you shared that about that we struggle sometimes to even put words to it.
Yeah,
But I love that idea of coming back to the core of I want to be seen by you. I want to be connected to you. This is the way that I feel that most as a man. But the connection piece, I think, is very valid piece to be able to share and have a conversation around, rather than just you're not meeting my needs, because then it's an attack against the other person instead of I want to connect with you, with the other person.
yeah. I think marriage is the greatest incubator and ecosystem that grows a man up if we're willing and allowing to do that work of growing up. And it's really just a mirror back to us. Oftentimes we're projecting all these things upon our spouse, but it's also true in the workspace, right? Oftentimes a conflict with a partner or a boss or employee, whoever it may be, it's really nothing more than just your fears and your own insecurities that are being revealed. And
Yeah.
so if you just get curious about your own emotions, and what I say is like, okay, how can you be the calmest person in the room while still being connected in relationship and being confident in your position?
I
If you
love
can
that.
navigate those three things and do it with a level of emotional maturity, man, you're gonna win so much favor and respect among not only your wife, but any business relationships as well.
Yeah. That's what an incredible picture you just painted. So what advice would you have to a man that hears that says, when I walk in a room, I am not those three things? What would be the next step for them?
I would get curious with yourself about why. Um, for example, there's scenarios that I walk into um, that I'm like, I'm really uncomfortable here, or possibly I'll leave a friend's house or friend's work environment and like, man, that dude's got it all. Like right now, I feel super small, right? But I think just inviting God into those places and being like, hey, God, will you grow me up? I'm not really sure what's going on here. I don't know why I'm starting to feel weak or I'm starting to feel out of control.
Yeah.
I love what Morgan Snyder says, like, do I have what it takes? Like, right? And so I think we're always trying to measure ourselves with that question of, do I have what it takes to rise up to this challenge? Um, but I'd go back to that simple four-step framework of like, just you need to get aware of your emotions and be able to put words around them, even if it means, as silly as it is, going to Google and printing out a color wheel chart of trying to explain yourself of like, I feel unwanted.
Yeah.
Okay, like what is that? Okay, and you just keep going deeper and deeper with that. But I think if we can become aware of our emotions, um, we can go a long ways in our relationships.
I love that. Yeah, we have said often that it's our emotions in and of themselves are not bad. It's what we do with them.
Yeah,
And so, the Bible says, "Be angry and do not sin." Right? It's not don't be angry. It's we can feel that emotion, but it's what we do with it that's right or wrong. So I love that idea of even printing out a color wheel and trying to just learn to articulate things better. And
yeah,
and it takes practice, right? Our sons are learning to read, right? They
yeah,
don't just naturally read. It takes time, it takes practice, it takes repetition, but they get better.
yeah,
And I look at Walker, he's our oldest, where his reading ability where he is currently to where he was last year is so vastly different. But
yeah,
if I would have looked last year and just said, "Hey, man, he's really struggling reading," okay, that's fine. But let's continue at it. Let's continue to get better, and he's doing so much better. So I love that perspective. All right, so Lance, I appreciate your time, man. We're kind of coming up to the end of it, and I will be respectful of it. Thank you for sharing so much about your family and yourself. I got a few questions just to kind of close this out. Number one, if you could get a book in the hand of, I'm actually ask you for two. For number one, for every parent, if you get a book in the hand of every parent, what book would you give them?
parenting book. Um, the only one that's coming to mind right now, and it's probably because I'm a dad of girls. Strong Father, Strong Daughters by Meg Meeker.
Okay,
Man, it's been ages since I've read it. I was talking to somebody recently that they're rereading it. That's probably why it's coming to the surface.
I
She's
love
a
that.
great therapist, great book, worth putting some of this emotional language to.
I love that. And then how about every couple that if you wanted to give to a husband to a wife that says, "Hey, this will help you in your relationship," what book would you give?
One of my favorite books is by a man named David Schnarch. He's not from a Christian paradigm or kingdom paradigm like we've been talking about. The book there's several books. One in particular is called Passionate Marriage.
Okay.
And he really paints a healthy picture of like what intimacy and passion and sex looks like in a covenant relationship. And he talks about just how the best sex that we're all going to experience is actually in our cellulite years. So Passionate Marriage by David Schnarch will help us really grow up in this idea of like, okay, this process is a emotional maturity. It's on me and it's not on my spouse.
I love that. I will definitely put that in the show notes, and we'll look to pick that book up. I haven't read it yet, but I will look forward to adding it to my library. All right, Lance, last question. Man, if you could give yourself a piece of advice 10 years ago, what would that piece of advice be?
I would have been 34, and I had just a couple years prior to that failed my marriage and family therapy exam. I think it's just like slow down and realize it's a long game,
Okay.
but it's also okay to go after what you want and to set your vision and path in that direction. And you don't really want to create, like I say, a rule of life but you really want to start to think about your life in decades. And for me in particular, like what I'm doing today, I envision myself. I mean, I remember telling somebody 14 years ago what I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
And so whatever it is that you set your feet to do, get people around you who are doing it, mentors, coaches, colleagues, and just say, hey, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, but this is what I see. Could you help me at least put one piece of the puzzle together? Because I can't do it alone. And I think too many of us are trying to make sense of life doing it alone.
I love that. But what an excellent piece of advice for us to end on. Lance, I appreciate your time, brother. I'm so glad that we got connected, and I look forward to having you back to talk more about family and business and life. I appreciate you in the work that you're doing. Everybody, thank you for joining us around the family table. We'll see you soon. Thank you for pulling up a chair at the family table. We hope today's conversation has strengthened the bonds that hold us together. Don't forget to follow the show to keep these heartwarming stories coming your way. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share it with friends and family. And if there's someone whose family story you think would be a perfect fit for the show, drop their name in the comments. We would love to hear from you and bring more families to the table. Until next time, cherish those moments with your loved ones.